Morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
How you doing?
Morning, guys.
Fantastic.
Happy December.
It's cold out.
It is very cold.
Not as cold as Park City.
Feels colder here.
Is it? It's the cold. It's the
humidity.
Moist humidity. Yeah, exactly.
Got off that plane and I was like, why does it feel colder here?
Yeah. Well, you're not skiing either, so it probably feels a little colder.
Taking stuff off for skiing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you take it for granted. There was ice on my neighbor's roof yesterday, and it's hard to. So you're so used to in Florida, like in the mornings or afternoons, like going for a bike ride or going for a run. And I was like, I don't even know what to wear. It's like ridiculous.
I go outside, I'll freeze to death.
I know. Just
Different deal, man. Different deal. I love it though. It's nice. If you can give me a chance to wear a sweater in Florida, I mean, I'm in. I put up Christmas lights yesterday. It was cold outside. It was fantastic. I loved it.
We're you guys got trees, Christmas lights. We're like Scrooges. We don't have anything right now.
We did a tree last night.
So my son literally has been running around school telling everybody that we don't celebrate Christmas. And I'm like, why would you say that? And he goes, well, we haven't put up any decorations. We obviously don't celebrate Christmas. So of course my wife has like a panic attack.
Of course.
And now I'm kind of having a panic attack. I'm like, you can't tell people that, first of all. And so it was a race to put up the tree and put up Christmas decorations last night because apparently if you don't decorate, you don't celebrate. Yes, we did. It was great.
Kim's Cabbage Patch.
Kim's Cabbage Patch. By the way, shout out to them, man. Cool spot in Claremont,
Florida.
Yeah. We went to Lowe's. I mean, there was nothing there that was even reasonable.
Same.
We went and looked at the lights. All the light sections cleared out. All the decorations are cleared out. Like, obviously, we got late to the game. And then you suggested, was it Kim's Cabbage Patch?
Kim's Cabbage Patch, yes.
Cool spot.
Super cool spot.
First of all, it's not why we're here to talk, but why is that? Is that just like a 2020 supply chain thing?
I asked them, and they said that they ordered. I said they said they ordered the same amount as last year.
It's always gone by December 1st. It's out at Lowe's and Home Depot before 11:15, right? And then by the time Thanksgiving's gone, it's gone. Yeah. They put it out super early at those places.
Oh, there you go.
But 'tis the season, right?
'Tis the season, man. Speaking of 'tis the season, we were talking about what we were going to chat about today, and we started talking about goal planning and end of year, and it's that time of year everybody's kind of reassessing and probably going to do their New Year's resolutions, and this is the time of year in about 2 weeks when the gyms get packed again. We'll see how that works with COVID, but
not in California.
Yeah, with that reset, and it'll be interesting.
I just got that.
Yeah, we'll see how that works. In different parts of the country, there'll be no anything. I'm sure.
Influx.
You know what's funny though is speaking of that, we're planning trips for our 5-year wedding anniversary, and it's like, okay, well, what state is it in? Because we're seeing like what the climate is with COVID and political, because that could affect the travel and the stay. It's just interesting. So
I had a buddy that was coming out here from California, and he's not coming anymore because they won't let him. Yeah. They won't let him travel because it's not essential business, if you will. So I was like, man, I don't know. We could talk about business while you're here. So we can make it essential.
By the way, during this New Year, New You goal setting, you want to talk about politics, religion?
Yeah.
Just go ahead and cover all of it? Or?
Yeah.
Please, no.
Tis that season.
No, it's over. That season's over.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm not going to say anything.
That's funny. Well, so yeah, we talked about it off camera a little bit. Let's kind of get into that. I mean, this is, some people do a lot of goal setting. Some people don't do any goal setting. And speaking of political, you talk about goal setting in front of somebody, there's people that are either hot or they're cold, right? They're like, well, I don't set goals. It's all, BS and this. And then you have some people that are extremely granular and they swear by it, and it's a significant discipline that they put up above everything. So and you have different perspectives, and then there's probably a lot of gray in between there. So I think a lot of us do things so differently. I kind of want to just chat about kind of what you guys do. Obviously, us being business partners for so long, we kind of have a glimpse inside each other's worlds. But even though we might have similar philosophy on some things, I think all the three of us, specifically for our personal stuff, we do things relatively different. That's my observation. I don't know if you guys would agree with that or not. But
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how different we do them. I mean, I think all three of us set goals. I think we check in on those goals pretty consistently as we've learned together early on in our relationship how important that was, and the importance of setting goals the right way, following a process to set the goals. So I don't see it that way.
Okay.
I think because our origin for that was pretty similar, right? I mean, I think all three of us, learned that. So I don't know. What's cool to me is that we do it.
Yeah.
We all find the importance of doing it every year. To me, it's not hype. I think the New Year, New You is hype. I think that's kind of funny. I think it's true. But the one thing that I think about is people come out of the gate hot, whether it's the gym or nutrition or any area of their life, and they set a pace that's just not sustainable. And then by February, if they're lucky, it's like, they miss a day or they fall off the wagon with something that they thought was important at the beginning of the year. And it just kind of finds its way down the list because other things pop up. And I think where we've been successful, I won't say perfect, but I'll say I think we set goals that, number one, they're sustainable. I think we follow our process that we've always, number one, learned and taught. So yeah, that's my feeling on it. But I do think it gets hypey. I think it gets real hypey at the end of the year. I'm not a guy that says, okay, and maybe this is what you meant by different, right? I don't come to the end of the year and say, I achieved these goals, I didn't achieve these goals. I just look at I kind of look at the wins throughout the year. And then in some cases, if I haven't met one of those goals, then I'll just maybe forward that goal or modify it a little bit for the future, for the next year. I don't know. I think you're different in that regard.
I mean, yeah, I think I'm a little bit more definitive, which is probably just a good metaphor for our personalities. That's why we're great partners. But mine's probably a little bit more, it's much more clear. Either won or I didn't. I think sometimes that's good, and I think sometimes it's bad, right? So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but
right.
Yeah, that's interesting to me though, because depending on who you talk to, they'll say clarity is power. Like I have my 2019 goals in front of me, and I did it in the format, and my 2020 ones are at my desk. But just so much thought went into the structure and even the written word. You can see how clear it was.
Love that.
So that was powerful. But then I'm also listening to you, and it's also powerful, the philosophy of like, can you sum it up in one word, or can you? That's what the balance and debate is for me, is how detailed do you get, how granular do you get versus, or do you get detailed and granular just so you can come back and have that clarity that there's maybe a number one overriding priority.
Yeah, and for those that are listening to this, Taylor's notes not only are detailed and bullet pointed and clean, but they're also laminated, right? So, that subtlety by itself is super powerful too, right? It's the difference between John McIntosh.
I was just going to say,
who's a big mentor of ours now, and my godfather. He would always laminate stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, why do you have a laminate machine in your house? And he's like, well, if it's important, you laminate it because you'll keep it. And it's so true, right? If that wasn't laminated, you probably wouldn't even be sitting here today with it. So that's a nugget. If you have something that you want, just get it laminated, and it just happens to stick around a long time. Yep. I know how, I don't know let's talk about that for a second before we get into like the X's and O's, and I'm happy to share kind of the way that I do it now, but I've done it different in the past too. And I'm not sold on either way. I'm still learning just like you guys are, and hopefully my goal setting this year will look different than it was last year, and hopefully I'll continue to improve my process. And I think improving the process isn't a matter of finding the exact way that you're supposed to do it. I think improving your process is having self-awareness to know what works for you, because different personalities, you influence behavior based on different personalities, right? So, and if we're not understanding our own personality and how that drives our own behavior, then in turn, we're just taking these canned out of the box goal setting things and we're trying to plaster it with everybody, and it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Yeah. So But let's get into that. You talked about sustainability. What's your thoughts, Tay, on that? Obviously, that's a great thought, Rod, in regards to setting a pace that is sustainable. Why is it that, and it's such a cliche topic, but I always find it fascinating to have a conversation. Why is it that, this year comes around, people come in hot, and 2 months later, all of a sudden, it's not a thing,
I think for me, over the years, I'm a big believer that every single person has their strengths and their weaknesses, which we all know, but we all have different tendencies. We all have different habits. We all have different things that we struggle with, right? And part of goal setting to me is like understanding future roadblocks and likely knowing myself now that I'm 32, going on 33 next month, like from my past behavior, from my past successes and failures, like what has tended to help me or hurt me, and being able to make my goals in a way that acknowledges those tendencies. Like for me, for example, last year when I did my goals, it was kind of like a built up version. So January, it was no beer, eat a clean diet. February, I moved into working out 3 to 4 times a week, right? And then by March, I wanted to do a big event, which we ended up doing 75 hard. So what was cool about that for me is that like I can get very, very good when I'm progressing in a way that is, I can feel it, I can see it, it makes sense to me. It's sustainable, but then you can go at something that's really hard now that you've built that base, rather than I'm also the type of person, to my detriment, that if I set an unsustainable pace and I would have gone 75 hard out the gate, like I probably by February would have been like eating Twinkies and, drinking a bunch of alcohol and so on and so forth. So I think what's fun about goal setting, and as you get older and you get a little wiser, is just internally understanding what works and what doesn't for you. And I think that that's a miss by some people, is it's almost like we want to distance ourselves from maybe our bad habits or our bad tendencies and think, hey, this year is going to be the year that doesn't exist, or that's not, whatever it may be, rather than saying, hey, look, that's part of, my DNA. That's a part of my behavior. That's something I'm going to acknowledge and embrace, and then build a plan around that. If that makes any sort of sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. How many people probably need a personal coach and they won't acknowledge the fact that they need a personal coach, right? How many people need a personal trainer? I mean, just if you just look at the masses of all of us that decide we're going to do something, and then 2.5 months into it, we for whatever reason we stop. How much value, is deprived from us by not having somebody that puts us every day to do that. Yeah, workout partner, and we look at cost. You always talk about cost versus return. How many people think, oh, well, it's too expensive, I could just do that on my own. Right? I could just go to the gym, or I could do this at home. I'm doing it for free, or whatever the case may be. And they're looking at the cost of what movements to do and diet to do. They're looking at the education of the information that someone's going to give them. But the reality is that's not really where the value is. And I think that's for same in business too. I mean, how many of us, the information's abundance to us. Like there's no question that you have that you can't literally Google from your phone and get the information. But the actual execution, the actual becoming a practitioner of what you're learning or what is where the magic is, right? The ideas are a dime a dozen. Execution is for professionals. I'll share with you kind of something I've never shared with you guys. So in the past, I've done goals. I've done probably 4 or 5 goals, and I have them. You guys have seen the success wheel, and it's you've got your personal, you've got your relationships and spiritual and business and physical, and I subscribe to that a little bit because I want to have I want to be well-rounded, if you will, in my life. And that's how I've usually done it. And they need to be specific. They need to have a time element attached to it. You need to be able to read it or see it every day. That's why lamination is so important. I usually have it at my desk. There needs to be a plan. The plan that you have doesn't have to be the plan, or the plan that gets you started doesn't have to be the end plan, but you got to have a plan. And then the biggest one for me, It needs to be measurable. But the biggest one for me that I think a lot of people miss and leave out, and I'm just absolutely passionate about this, is you have to be willing to give something up. Most people continually just dump more and more and more and more and more and more on top, and then they run themselves thin. You call it sustainability. I call it the exact same thing. I think there's a lack of intelligence that comes from goal setting, where people think goal setting is adding, when I think goal setting is using a scalpel instead of just adding more stuff. So I look at it and say, okay, I've got a certain amount of time in the day. I've got a certain amount of energy in the day that I want to put towards certain things. What am I willing to give on and sacrifice in order to achieve this? And I think it kind of puts things in perspective too. Like, how bad do you want it? Are you just writing down the goal because it sounds good?
Yeah.
If somebody told you had to give up something that you really cared about, you'd go, you know what? Maybe I don't want to do that goal then. It's not worth it to me. It's easy to sit around and just write out what you want. Those are just dreams, right? Like, there's a difference between dreaming and there's a difference between goal planning. Goal planning is hell or high water. This is my execution plan. So that's what I've done in years past. I didn't do this past year. I don't know if you guys read the book, The One Thing by Keller Williams. It's a great book. I think there's a lot of good nuggets in there. But back to the self-awareness thing, I did one personal goal and I did one business goal. And I did not achieve, I didn't achieve that business goal. We got close, made good progress, but technically, once the finish line is over, we won't be there. But what I learned through that process is I focused on it a lot and I gave it a lot of attention. I gave it a lot of energy. It was top of mind all year and it was great. But man, I was bored. For me personally, I was bored. So here it is, something that for somebody that I have massive amounts of respect for. Gary Keller is probably one of my biggest mentors today. And I subscribe to that philosophy a lot. So I took it, made it my own. But what I've realized is that I have a hard time focusing on one thing. I need multiple things going on at one time, and you guys laugh at me all the time.
It's funny, I look up and you're laughing.
I do well in chaos. And if there's too much order, I don't do well. I don't know why.
No periods in his head, man. I mean, no, there's always a period. There's never an open thought.
Yeah, we were talking about this yesterday. Like, Brett said, you get that text and be like, yeah, it's behind the string of the 29 texts before that I still haven't read, man. They all come at 11 at night and I wake up and I have a couple texts. So no, I didn't get
I apologize.
But anyway, that's I totally buy what you're saying, where it just didn't work. It didn't trigger. It wasn't exciting.
It just didn't give me the energy that I needed. And I flow off of, I want to look at my goals and get excited and have energy. And sometimes when I feel a sense of urgency, like there's too much to do and I'm behind, it gives me this jolt of, I just thrive in that environment. The juices flow, things are going on. When it's just static, yes, it's always a focus, but this comes back to self-awareness. I'm able to focus on multiple things at one time. I'm able to have 6, 7, 8, 9 projects at one time and not lose focus on them. But what I've learned this year is that I can become complacent if I simply just have 1 or 2 things. I just don't thrive that well with
It's interesting you say that. So I know, Taylor, you've been a part of our goal, kind of our goal mastermind. We name it Tribe of Mentors.
Yep.
I wrote down workout.
To give Tim Ferriss credit for that.
We did. It's in the small print. But Tribe of Mentors was a group of us that chose to be public with our goals, and we have a monthly check-in. First thing I hear you say is that check-in for us was important because it's a chance to have accountability. I know accountability is a funny word for some people. It's like, these are my goals. If I choose to go all out, then great. If I don't, then be careful how much you try to hold me accountable. I happen to be somebody that believes in, if I tell you what they are, and you guys know this about me, I expect to be held accountable, right? And I welcome it. But other people are different, and that's not the point of this. But that workout partner is everything, right? I think that built into the system of and I'm getting to a point. But built into the system of setting goals, making sure they're written, making sure they're specific, making sure there's a time element. What are you willing to give up? All those, then have a plan. All those steps. To me, the most important one is the accountability partner, the workout partner. But it's interesting you say that, because this year with your singular focus, you did seem bored every time we had a check-in. Your energy seemed different at our Tribe of Mentors gathering, whereas typically we're checking in on certain things that I remember 2 years ago, we were very specific, and it was like, okay, where are you with this one?
And I was sending you all these text messages.
And you send me all these text messages.
No, that's probably why you're sending all these text messages this year, because he's
bored.
If those that are watching or listening, I got absolutely heckled yesterday.
We don't heckle them often. We got in there pretty good yesterday.
Man, I felt a little beat up yesterday. I got tag teamed yesterday by my dudes over here.
Well, I want to say, we don't chop each other up very much.
Not very much.
And we got on you pretty good yesterday.
It was good.
He said, "Did you get that text?" I said, "Did you get the last 5 emails I sent?"
No, but I want to something else you said, Brett, that I wanted to kind of piggyback off of or expand on a little bit is I think something you said is really, really sharp and really intuitive, right? It's like people think goals are, I got to add something. And I know I've been guilty of that. And until you just said that, I may be guilty of setting goals because it feels good. Mm-hmm. But then I get to the end of the year, or I get to the end of whatever check-in period or whatever time element I put on it, and maybe I'm partially down the road, or maybe I'm halfway down the road, but I'm not all the way down the road. So you say to yourself, well, this goes back to a friend of mine that we used to have a conversation about. If it's important to you, you'll find the time to do it.
Love that story, by the way.
Right? A buddy of mine owned a gym, and this was back in my golf days. I digress. And he's like, what's your workout plan? And it wasn't. He was a 7-day-a-week guy, and I was a 7-day-a-week guy at the golf course. But he's like, well, how are you going to work in fitness? Well, I'll work in a day here, 2 days there, 3 days there. He goes, well, it's just not important to you. I'm like, well, yeah, it is. He's like, man, it's not important to you. It's okay to admit that it's not important to you. Yeah. If you struggle to find the time to get in here, or you don't want to make that part of your plan, or don't realize how important that is to your overall goal, then just admit that it's just not that important. And the more we went back and forth, the more I thought to me, I'm like, man, he's right. It's just because the things that I find important, come hell or high water, like you said, I do them. So
it doesn't mean you don't see value in
correct.
It doesn't mean you don't want to do it. It just means from a level of priority.
Well, and that's why I think that's why this hit me so much. What you just said, I feel like I sometimes I may set goals because they feel good. Sure. There's value in them, but it's not a come hell or high water thing.
Sure. Right.
And maybe that's just maybe that's just an opportunity for me.
I think that's everybody.
Or for anybody to say, be careful what you put down. Add it. Goal setting at the end of the year, moving into a new year, is not about what else can I pile on.
Yeah.
Because one of those steps, as we know and we've learned and we've abided by, is what are you willing to give up?
Totally.
You got to give up something to to achieve your goal. I remember Jeff Olson talking about, he was a competitive softball player, and their team was a national contender every year. And Jeff Olson said, in order to get to where I want to get, I had to give up that team. Well, he loved that team. Yeah. He was competitive. The team was good. They traveled. They won championships, and he was willing to give that up in order to get what he wanted to get. I mean, that's a strong sentiment there. And I just think to myself, it's just too easy. This is me. It's too easy to set a goal that's a feel-good goal, rather than saying, forget the feel-good goals. And maybe it's tied or whittled down to one goal. But don't set a goal unless you're willing to just go to the mat for it.
Well, and also, are you willing to give something up that's important to you? It's not like, that's the other thing too, like honesty. Some things say, okay, well, I'll give something up. It's like, yeah, but usually that's not just give something, usually that comes with a big price.
Sure.
Because the bigger the goal, the higher the price you have to pay for it. Yep. So if you want small goals, you don't have to give up much. But if you have big goals, like it costs more. So it's kind of a gut check. If you ever go through this, and if you're listening to this or you're watching this, if you ever go through this and you have a goal that's a big goal, ask yourself if what you're willing to give up correlates with the level of importance of the goal. And if it doesn't, you have no shot, right? If you're trying to do big things, if you're not giving something up that's big, you're dead in the water before you started.
Interesting.
Because you're just not understanding the universal laws of success. You're not understanding everything costs something. So
What a concept, huh?
yeah, imagine that.
What a concept.
Yeah, the subtraction part of goal setting, I think, is what's missed most, and I think that's the most valuable. And that's in this structure.
I agree.
The structure was make a goal, break it down with clarity, right? So if it's a production goal, what's the number, and then what's the weekly, daily focus, and then it's why do you want this goal? Mm-hmm. And then that was in there. What will I need to give up? For me, I'll just be transparent. This is 2019. Literally says time spent putting out small fires, right? That's a business goal. And I just wrote, unless it is a major issue that involves a team member violating our key team principles, then someone else can help. That was something I struggled with for a while, but that was kind of the breaking point of that was a big let go for me. But then is also right by a big win for me, which I think was really
awesome.
Interesting.
That's cool.
And then also resources needed. What do I need to read? Who do I need to be around? And then lastly, accountability as far as what will I do? How many times will I check in and so on and so forth. And I certainly wasn't perfect. But it was the first year, 2019 was the first year that I actually felt like I made my goals genuine to me. And then I felt like because of that, I wanted to follow them. And that's a fun process. That's something I've always struggled with. Like you said, sometimes I make goals to feel good. I agree with you. I think sometimes you make goals for the idea that the person that is holding you accountable or the people that are in your goals or your mastermind group look at him and go, oh, wow, that's a good goal. I should make a goal like that.
Totally.
And that's what I said, like you mentioned, honestly, like getting really real with yourself, looking back, present, and now looking forward, like what are those key KPIs, key performance indicators in your personal life?
That's a big one. You said, why do I want this goal? That's a huge one. That's another gut check. It's like, totally. if you're struggling to figure out why you want the goal, maybe you want it for the wrong reason. Right. And to your point, I think we're all like that. I think to some extent, we sit down and look, I'm all about dreaming big, right? None of us are thinking big enough, right? Whatever you think you want to go or where to go, there's another level. So, but there's a difference between thinking big, but then being able to chunk it down to what you're willing to hell or high water. And I think sometimes we look at goal setting. I know personally for me, just like you guys, I look at goal setting as like, okay, well, this is what I want out of life. It's like, well, no, this isn't the right place for that. Right? This isn't a vision statement. This isn't talking about, a 5-year plan. This isn't talking about big, stuff that you want long term. This is talking about what are you willing to climb over a barbed wire fence for this year?
Right.
And how are you going to do it? You're going to go over it. You're going to drink, you're going to dig under, what type of tools do you need? Like this is tactical stuff, to get through some sort of barrier. And when we sit down, it's easy to kind of put pie in the sky, and that's exciting, right? So, and that brings energy, but I think there is a delineation there.
Well, it's also, I hate to jump you, Rob, but it's also, I think sometimes the challenge is there are some years for me that it seems like, bam, I know exactly what my focus is going to be. Yeah. I'm in a position where I've done, kind of thing. And then there's some years where like, man, it's just not that clear. So I don't know what I want to jump over bar.
That interesting though. I mean,
great point.
That to me, that's a relevant thought. Goal setting is not always clear to me. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's kind of like when you ask somebody your why, to your point about, why do you want the goal?
Sure.
Asking someone, why do you work so hard? Why did you start that company? Why did your company have this mission? That's not an easy question for a lot of people.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's not an easy question it's not a question that comes with an easy answer. So I think that I agree with you so much. I mean,
and I think that's beautiful, because how many people listen to that all the time, and you say, oh, you got to know your reason why, and someone goes, man, I don't know. I just know that I want to be successful and I want progress in my life. I don't know why I want progress, but I just feel like innately I'm pulled to do better maybe. But I think there's a certain vulnerability that's attractive there with that, because for you guys to say that, I know you guys, and you guys are very goal oriented. You're very driven. So to hear somebody say that, I think it puts some people at ease. Just stay into the process long enough, and hopefully, if you keep asking good questions, you might get a good answer. But you don't have to have it all figured out.
I think it's interesting too, though, with goals. You both have alluded to it. I'm gonna allude to it. I'm gonna talk about it too. But I think the other thing is the quantum leap theory, right? It's like I'll set a goal and I won't come out of the gate with a plan, or I'll, maybe it's not something I'm willing to jump over a fence or dig under with, but it's still important to me or has value. It reminds me of the book Achievement, David Byrne. Remember when we read that book?
Great book.
The premise of the book was take the 12-month goal to whatever it is. And you both specifically said, chunk it down, right? Mm-hmm. So an annual goal, back that down to a monthly what's the monthly progress? What does the monthly progress need to look like? Take it back a step further. What does the weekly progress need to look like? And then take it back a step further. What does the daily progress need to look like? And I think what's important too is some of those goals are going to you back them down even more than just the day. Maybe you need to back them down to the hour, in order to get them to a point where it's a sustainable activity that practiced over time, as we know, the slight edge, right, will help us get there. So I think it's, when I hear you both talk about take the goal, why are you trying to set it? I think that's important, even though that's not an easy question to answer. But then realize that why is going to translate into what it is for me anyway, what that process looks like over a year, and then chunking it backwards in order to make it like in a year, I want to, be 3% body fat. Well, if you're 20% body fat on January 1st, you can't see 3 until you see 19.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Right. So I don't know.
I like that a lot. And fitness is a good, health goals are very common, right? That's probably the number one goal, I think personally, that everyone tends to make is the new year. You mentioned the gyms being full. I actually think the gyms being full is great. Like, people are making the intention, they're showing up, but we know that there's a higher percentage of people that won't sustain that because of what you mentioned. They're trying to go from 20% to 3% body fat, rather than going 20 to 18. And then when they see 18, what's that next step?
Yep.
And that was kind of my reference of last year's goals for me, is that for me, that little stair step works well for me. When I start small, I get a win. Then I go a little bit higher, I get another win. And one of the reasons that I work out, this is something that's funny, because I got in some of the best shape of my life this year. And then I went, boom, like I'm talking about crash, man. Like I'm talking about, I didn't even see anything but a carb for weeks. So I experienced that. And as somebody, and what I've realized over the last couple of years is, like, some people, their fitness goals are based around longevity, right? They want to live longer. They want to live healthy. I actually don't even give a shit about that. Like, of course I want to live a long time, but it doesn't motivate me. Like, when I don't want to do a workout.
Not at 32.
That's true. But like when I go to, that's probably part of it. But when I go to do a workout, I'm not like, oh, you know what though? Let me eat this salad, because then I'll be able to meet my grandkids. Like, I'm not there yet. But what really, I've chunked it down, and I've realized when I'm not working out, I work out because it's pride, right? Like, when I finish workout, I'm proud of myself. And then that emotion perpetuates. And then I'm more likely to hit the other goal or do that next workout. So, and if I don't do those workouts, I start to cycle closer to a depressive state or a higher anxiety state. So for me, it's like, literally, it's like managing myself. And that's one of the factors that helps me be able to go to the stair step and just get a little bit closer. And I think that can be missed, is to say, yes, dream big, go after desired outcomes, but then chunk it down to say, okay, well, what do I need to just get to that next step? What do I need to get to the 19%, 18%?
Well, I think you're so right too. It's like, we talked about it in our episode on the Be Extraordinary podcast here with Jeff Botak. Remember, he was talking about, you talk about shrinking the game, right? Yeah. Win a possession, celebrate a small win inside the office. But that's all psychological, to say, if I can accomplish the smallest thing, what is that next? Then it leads to another small thing, and it leads to another small thing. So I think that's a vital part of setting a goal and being able to chunk it down to where you can manage it, measure it, as you said, but be able to see slight progress over and realize you're in it for that's why I talk about quantum leap. It's like, what's your goal? What is your 2021 goals? Whatever it is. day one is going to look different than day 365. It should. It's supposed to. It's not like I set a goal, it's an annual goal. So it's not meant to be hit by January 31st. In most cases, it should have a pretty long path to get there.
The question is like, what are you looking for, right? Because if you get that emotional win or you get that progression feeling, and that that's a feeling of euphoria and productivity, effectiveness, whatever it may be, you're kind of doing things to seek that out, in my opinion, right? So it's funny because that's what I realized, that the result is a fun scoreboard, but it's truly not. And I used to laugh at people and be like, yeah, the result's not, what you're looking for. Focus on the process. And you're like, yo, but I want the result, Yeah. But it is funny when you start to realize that really for me, the result is the feeling. And then as long as that progression allows you to have that feeling rather than just progressing towards a result. And then once you get that result, you've arrived. And I know you guys,
That's so good.
Totally agree with that.
We talk about that a lot. So.
That's so good. I mean, you basically just defined your reason for wanting to have health goals. Mm-hmm. And right? I mean, you just described why. That's very good clarity on something that has been completely different for years past, right? So, how much of that comes from just reps? How much of that comes from just going through this process multiple times? Because that's different. That's a you thing, right? That's a you thing that somebody could tell you that, they told you that for a long time, but you've grown to realize that this is why I do it. How much of this stuff is just a matter of us getting into activity, or how much of this stuff is a matter of us studying? Is there a balance?
I think it's failure too. I think a lot of my self-discoveries have come from falling on my face. Or you talk about, making goals and then getting to February and not having them. That's a shame cycle that people go down every single year, mm-hmm. right? Every single year, if you're not hitting goals that you've set for yourself, you're probably perpetuating a lower self-esteem every single year, which is crazy, right? Like no one wants that. That's not the goal. So the idea of this progression, this stair step, this slight edge, it sounds good in theory, the book achievement. But then what happens when you mess up? What happens when you go out and you eat too much pasta and you weren't supposed to, and then Sunday you wake up and you feel terrible about yourself? Like, how do you allow that? That comes to the protocols. It's like not, if you mess up, but when you mess up, what will you do? And that's a part of the goal setting that I've implemented specifically in the last 2 years that has been fun.
So let me get some color to that. So anybody that's listening or watching this, corporately, we do this now with the three of us. And personally, I don't know how we all fit it in, but obviously I think I learned most of this from you because it was a Jocko thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't know if I have that right, but I think Tate said, hey, you guys got to read this or whatever. But we do a plan, protocols, proximity every year for the three of us, because obviously all three of us have different lanes. They cohesively work together, and it's been one of those things we've learned to get good clarity on how we're going to contribute to each other and the team. So we have a plan, so focuses, and then we have proximity, which means what do we need to be around in order. Proximity is like the resources you talked about, like books I'm reading, people I'm around, what do I need to get close to in order to help me achieve this plan? And then what you're talking about is the protocols. What protocols are in place to help me be successful? And the biggest thing about protocols is when this happens, this is what I do, right? So we don't have to think about it. So if you fall off the wagon, it's like, okay, well, I recognize that I knew this was going to happen. I've already planned for it. I've already written out exactly what I'm going to do. And if I may, I know what yours is. I know Sunday is a big deal for you because, we may go on the boat or we may go down to the beach house and, we might get loose and have some drinks. Sunday comes, it's like one of those where you're fanatical about getting a good meal, making sure you get to bed early and refocusing. So Monday you're good instead of having to wait till Wednesday. And I know that's been a big thing for you. And I've actually tried to borrow from that because it's like, all right, cool. I know I'm going to do certain things, but is it going to take me 3 days to get back in a rhythm? Or am I going to go ahead and nip this in the butt and use this time frame to activate a protocol? I don't know if you want to share with that, but that's from my observations, been a huge deal.
Yeah, that's been recent. And when I'm good, when I'm great within my own goals or personal life, that is strong. When I'm not, that starts to slip. And I think it comes back to knowing yourself, because in the past, what we all do is we look around and we say, oh, Brett's able to juggle 10 balls. Brett's able to go to brunch on Sunday and then go out on the boat and do a cocktail cruise and be fine Monday morning, you know, or whatever it may be. Like, Brett's able to stay down longer when we go to the beach house and kind of have a slower Sunday where I'm out the door by 7:30 because I'm already thinking of that. Brett's able to eat Chick-fil-A in the mornings and grab 2 Panera sandwiches.
But guys, by the way, these are not metaphors. These are
real things.
This is real life.
These are real things.
Yeah, no, like seriously, that's a perfect example. I think that's where people fall off. Is like, you look around at your group and you naturally go, I should be able to do that. It's like, no, my body's not in shit. We're blood brothers. My body's still not built that way, right?
Okay.
So it's an understanding of like, hey, when he asked me if I want Panera, it's a hard no, right? I'm not thinking about that rather than going, yeah, I mean, I'll grab a sandwich.
It'd be fun and enjoy it, but
and then what's going to happen is I'm going to grab that sandwich, and then noon's going to come, and I'm going to feel bad about myself, and then the next decision, I'm probably going to feel a little worse. So I'm just very aware of that in my own life, is that, you know, I can be hard on myself, but I also know that like I can't do certain things that other people are able to do, unless, you know, there's a protocol enacted.
What I like about that PPP, the plan, protocol, proximity, is when I hear you say you fall off, or you make a bad decision, or you run outside of what you know is a constructive Sunday, if you will. To me, that's gray, right? It gets gray, and what the PPP does is it gets back into black and white. It's like, okay, I made a decision that I may not be feeling good about. I ate the Panera, or I had some drinks on Sunday evening, which I don't typically do because I might feel like shit on Monday morning. The plan or the protocol, the proximity, it's a hard black or white to get you out of that gray area. That's what I like about it.
Yeah.
And I think since this is the second year we've done that, it's been great. I mean, now we've got them on our phones and we look at them all the time. Thank you for that. But
that's a great point. The other thing is, like, to the same point, some people are, you know, I think about Kobe and, like, you know, going out and having the beers with the team, you know, like hell or high water, he's getting up and he's going to work out, right? Some of us are able to go do things that aren't in our plan, but we just get it done anyway. Yeah. Some of us, we just can't do it. Like, can't's a strong word, but we just are challenged significantly to do that, right? I think that's knowing, like, if you see a pattern in your life, you know, personal development is having enough self-awareness to be able to look at it with unbiased, and then create strategies to be able to overcome it, right? So it's not necessarily willpower is not a noble trait. Absolutely. Right? Willpower means nothing. It's just a personality thing. Yeah. So creating strategies that help you win, that's a noble trait.
Yep. Yes. You're real good at that. That's a weakness I have. Like
not that that's a weakness you have, but you are one of those people that can just go. You have a motor.
He doesn't sleep.
You could be up till 4 a.m. and you're pulling a trailer to the hunting camp like at 7 a.m. And sometimes it boggles my mind.
Well, and in certain cases, I mean, I think I feel it sometimes, but
for those that are listening, like, Tay and I struggle very much to keep up with this guy. I don't know how he does it. You know, speaking of text messages, I'll get like a like on Instagram at 4:30 in the morning, and he'll be, you know, on his way to Georgia to hunt, and then he's coming back and he's helping me with an event at the house, and I don't know how he does it. Honestly, it's like a Energizer bunny. But
well, that's not why I brought it up. My point was to say that you're real good at that system, and I need more of that. Where it's like, here, I guess it's saying no to more things. I don't know. I know you're trying to say yes to more things. So it's just interesting how people are wired differently. I don't know. It's interesting to me.
The no to more things. I said to my wife last night, I said, you know, some of the happiest moments were in the COVID lockdown, because it was a hard no to all of the things that you were tentative about. And then the things that you wanted to, maybe you're a little bummed that you couldn't do stuff, right? And I know that, look, we were all affected by COVID, so don't take that out of context. But I'm talking about personally within a household, to be able to strip yourself of all these maybes and all the energy that goes into that.
Yeah.
It was very refreshing to just say everything's no, until there's a yes again, which
You're
took
right.
a couple months.
We felt that.
Yeah.
And I know Susan, God bless her. I know she wishes I said no to more things.
I know, right?
Well, it's interesting. Is like that's a philosophy you have. You have a yes philosophy, right? You've always told me you just can't say no. That's been a philosophy, and it's served you very well. But everything in balance, right? So I think I don't say yes to enough things. So here we are on different, situations. I'm trying to counterbalance in a different way. You're trying to counterbalance a different way. It just comes back to the same thing. It's like, I think the more you go through this, I think get in the activity. So if I was going to say anything to somebody going through this process, either A, you've done it before, but have you really done it? Like, have you really done it? Like, are you doing it on chicken scratch paper and then like folding it up and putting it in your desk? Like, or are you laminating it? You're typing it out. It's bulleted. It's with, you did it with pride and care. That's what I'm talking about. Then you've really gone through the process.
Absolute intention. Yeah.
Significant intention. Yeah. Focus intention. If you've done that, or if you've not done that, then number one, just start and do it. And maybe in this episode, we'll maybe give like kind of some of the things we've talked about. Maybe if somebody wants to get started, they can have an idea. I would say get started, and it's not going to be perfect, and you're probably going to mess it up, and you're probably going to say, oh, I wish I would have done that, or I went overboard, or I didn't do enough. And that's not the point. Do it. Because once you get into the process where you've done this a couple times, you can have that aha moment of, oh, so this is the reason why I'm doing this, right? How many times did you go through this process, make the same health goal, but you had no idea why you were doing it? And the reason why was completely different, because I know we come from the same camp. You've probably put why on every single time you've done it. But, the 8th, 9th, 10th time, now you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. If you didn't do the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, you wouldn't have gotten to the 8th time where you go, oh, so this is who I am. So this is what makes me tick.
And that's one of my favorite parts about being an adult. Like I love getting older because you get a longer understanding of what makes you tick in these moments of like, hey, where am I really good? Where have I been good? And then where am I really bad? Like, so let me monitor that. Like a perfect example of the fitness thing, of anything, right? It's these little things, but it's understanding if I don't do these little things, then I'm going to be useless, right? So it's like people are like, oh yeah, I want to work out because I want to live long for my wife and my daughter. It's not my goal. Like, again, it's because I want to work out so I can be proud of myself, so I can be present for my wife and my daughter. Because if I don't work out, I'm going to be thinking about the fact that I didn't work out and that I'm a piece of shit. Like, it's weird how my mind works that way, but I'm sure somebody can relate, where there's just a trueness to that is very empowering. So whether that's professionally or whether that's physically or whether that's mentally or spiritually, is to know that if you don't do those things and you don't have those hard conversations with yourself, you're going to be riding a wave, and then you may, and I've done this, where you just fall off and you're borderline useless in a lot of your roles. And so that's part of goal setting for me too, is just to kind of make sure I stay in the game. It's kind of like we had a podcast on risk and making sure that you don't make mistakes to put you out of the game. I kind of view that as goal setting, is to make sure that you're moving the needle in a way that helps progress, rather than moving an unsustainable pace, falling off, and then trying to get back up. Because I've done that more often than not in the past. I look at that as like all of my 20s. It's like this. Yeah. And then there's this like little bit of an inkling where you start to, as a more mature human being, hopefully just understanding those things a little bit better, to where you avoid those yo-yo moments.
So it sounds like less volatile.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
So
the highs aren't as high and the lows aren't as low. I think that's experience. You call it. You said growing up. I just think it's experience. You say becoming an adult. I just think it's experience. The more experience you have, you don't want to feel too high, but or you enjoy the feeling of some sort of win, but you don't like to pair it with what you typically had felt was next, which was some sort of low.
Yeah, and I was sharing with you guys yesterday. I'll just share like a practical example. couple weeks, you have Thanksgiving, you had all these events for me, right? You're probably drinking more booze than you would. You probably, staying up later, not getting sleep, not working out. And I had a great time at a wedding away. And I came back Sunday and I was like low, man. And then Monday I was still fighting. Tuesday I'm still fighting, and I'm back at it. But I had a conversation like, okay, what would I do differently? Would it just be that much differently if Saturday morning and Sunday morning I just went on a run? If I just did 100 push-ups? Because I would have that little bit of a hack to go. Sure. By the time Monday came around, I could point back to something objective to say, hey, you stayed in the game. And so just little stuff like that throughout people's life.
That's so good.
That's so good.
Talk about a protocol. I mean, and that's all mental.
Right.
The 100 push-ups isn't not going to do anything for you.
It's not going to make or break it.
But you can look at it and go, all right, cool. At least I still stayed. At least I was still aware enough to know that I didn't get to turn it off. Like it's a part of my lifestyle instead of something that I'm doing.
So true.
It's who I am.
Right.
Instead of Monday comes now, I got to get back on my checklist.
And can you spend some time there, because the identity-based goal versus the result, that to me speaks loudly.
So that's really cool. So
Identity-based.
I'm a
Great way to say
huge. So for me. So that's funny that you mentioned. So for me, what I've realized is for the health and fitness game, for me, we all have self-doubt. We all have these things that creep in our head. Are we who we say we are? Are we living up to the expectations that we've set for ourselves, our family, that we project, that who we want to be? And for me, I've just like all of us, you have high expectations of who you want to become. And who you are. And for me, the health and fitness thing, it's the same as getting up early for me. It's the two things in my life that I was really struggling with. I could work all day until 3:00 in the morning, no problem, and do all this stuff. But when it came to getting up early and when it came to getting a workout in, I just really struggled. And, and I don't know where it came from, but it became a shift for me that says, instead of writing down goals of I want a health and fitness, why not? The people that have what I want, and the people that are who I want to become, they do these specific things. And if I want those specific things, and if I want to become those types of people, if I want to become that type of person, then this is just something that you do. And for me, it just became, when I work out or when I do those things, I feel as if I am the person that I want to be, or that I am who I say I am. And one of my deepest fears is just being a hypocrite. I'm scared to death to be, or I'm not scared to death. I can't be scared to death. I am scared to say one thing and not live it out, or not be that person. And the reality is we're all going to fall short. So that's an imperfect fear, but for the most part, that's a big driver for me. So the workout game and all that stuff is it allows me to feel afterwards like, all right, well, you are that person. You are becoming that person, not because of what you did, but because of what you do, as in it's a part of your lifestyle. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
What's funny is we're going through we're starting an NLP 3-month course here in the next week that I'm super stoked about. Rod and I are doing it.
Great.
And it's got fitness attached to it. And identity work is one of those things that obviously Tony Robbins talks about a lot. It's becoming the person, or thinking and becoming the person that you want to be. How do you view yourself? What's the internal story that you tell about yourself? And we all act in a way that is congruent to the identity that we believe that we are. So if you believe that you're a piece of shit and 2 months into goal setting, you fall off, well, then that's what's going to happen, right? So that's conditioning, like you said, every year. So the longer you perpetuate that, the harder it is to get out of that, because you're creating a narrative in your story.
That's true.
If you're one of those people that you say, I just work out every day, that's who I am, well, then you'll work out every single day. And it'll be effortless. It'll be easy. We all act in a way that lines up with the personal identity and the story that we tell ourselves. So for me, that's the biggest thing, is almost to the fault maybe of a fear, which maybe that's a bad thing. I've got to move that into a positive thing. But I want to act in a way that my future self would act in the present. So, and that's a big driver.
Something you said that I think is so important is words are powerful. Words are such a part of this, and people forget it all the time. You just said, I'm scared to death, and you corrected yourself. You're not scared to death. God, I hope you're not dying. I hope you're just scared, right?
Absolutely.
People say those things all the time, and I'll tell you right now, that choice of words, it's funny. I can still hear John Drennan in my head, when you say, man, I'm starving to death. Well, man, I hope you're not dying, right? You're just hungry, right? Or whatever. I mean, just not whatever.
There's a lesson there.
There's a lesson there, and it so applies to what we're doing here and everything we've talked about with the gray area or falling off the wagon or making a decision that you feel like you got to, pick yourself back up for. Or you just said it. If you think you're a piece of shit 2 months down the road, you are a piece of shit. Like, that talk matters.
I knew this was going to happen.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, or I cringe is, I always find a way to self-sabotage myself, or, this is so me. This is so my luck.
What you focus on, it's like,
which is easy to do. But what you said triggered something for me. It's like, how you perceive yourself. You guys ever heard that people perceive themselves on not how they view themselves, but the expectations of others and how they believe they view them?
Wow.
And so I've fallen into that with different behaviors in my life where you have this subconscious thing that you have to live up to this other person's vision of you.
Yes.
You don't even realize it until you have a yo-yo or you get knocked on your ass or whatever it is, to where you have to get real clear on what that future self looks like, what that self-perception looks like. Like, I'm a strong believer that you can behave your way to an identity. You can behave your way to happiness, because, whatever habit, whatever addiction, whatever it is that you have, you see people recover from being, massive drug addicts to becoming people that change the world, right? Like, that happens. So every single win along that way allows them to view themselves differently. And as they view themselves differently, it opens up different perspectives, wider visions, different goals. And that's why sometimes when it's not that clear, sometimes you just behave. Sometimes you just get the workout in. Sometimes you just
stay in the game.
Yeah, what a cool
whatever.
thought,
so I'm a big believer that, if you're in a tough spot or you feel like you've fallen off, just behave your way to where you have, and it goes back to a momentum conversation. It's like when you set goals, you tend to January 1, you're as worse as you're ever going to be. You're hungover from New Year's Eve. You've let all this go. You've eaten all this food over the holidays. You've taken off work more than you probably did, right? And then it's like January 1, we're pushing this huge boulder. So one thing I've tried to do, as I've failed in goal setting many times, is come after Thanksgiving, really get it into gear to say, man, I at least got to do something that gives myself momentum, that when Jan 1 comes, I'm a little bit further in the game than maybe the rest of the world, or I'm a little bit further in the game where I don't feel behind, and that seems to perpetuate. So
that's a protocol.
You just said something.
Protocol.
You just said something that I'm reminded of so clearly. You know how they always say that in the insurance industry, from Thanksgiving to December, it's real slow. Mm-hmm. And I've always been so taken by that. It's like, well, what you're doing is you're telling yourself that you're going to have a shitty November or a bad December, and then you've got that boulder in January. And I think that's so true. What you're saying, I get goosebumps thinking about the fact that people, we're going to be real slow. The year's over.
Our industry is so privy to just calling it a day, saying that's just the way that it is.
Oh my God!
But isn't that it's humans?
Yeah,
that's humans, though.
Yeah, for sure.
To a certain extent, we want to accept, we want to blame. We just got out of politics season, so we won't go there. But in theory, you're kind of like accepting these things of like, that lets us off the hook a little bit, because because it's slow traditionally, that allows me to just chill.
Yep.
Which, again, and I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but it's just something to acknowledge that you're finding a third party reason to let.
And then like you said, come January, you got this big boulder to push.
Yeah.
And that would be motivation for me to never subscribe to the fact, whether it's the industry or just people in general, that once the holidays come, the year's kind of over. So I'm just going to be a victim of circumstance, right? I'm going to be a victim of the fact that I'm going to eat a lot, or I'm going to drink a lot, or I'm going to party on New Year's Eve, or whatever it is. To me, the weight of having to push that boulder starting out 1-1 to get momentum, to get me to the next holidays, I don't want any part of it. I don't want any part of it.
Man, I got a couple thoughts on that. Number one, behave your way to happiness. That's really cool. I wrote that down, and I'm gonna take that one for notes. I just learned something. Number two, like, what an opportunity for you to think differently. What an opportunity. If you want any leverage point to get ahead and either beat your competition or beat you versus you, that time period between Thanksgiving and New Year's Eve is probably the most important time that you could possibly do, because that's your blue ocean. That's where most people are not putting in the effort, right?
Yep.
So if you're looking for any leverage point, and I just learned something from that. You've said that before, and I subscribe to that. But that time that you put in right there is probably the difference between either making your year or not making your year. That's number one. So that's super, super cool. I wanted to give a shout out to a guy right now that I am seeing 100% of that. Tori Scarborough, one of the guys in our office, missed a significant level on President's Club, which is a sales club that we have, last year, by the margin was so slim that it was nauseating, right? It was so painful for all of us because he worked so hard. But he would tell you the reason he didn't make it was because of October, November, and December, because we're slow during those months, right? And I know you guys have been to the office consistently, he is the first in, he's the last to leave, and he's just got this different tenacity about him. And I talked to him yesterday. I'm like, man, there's something different about you right now. You weren't like this beginning. He goes, I appreciate you saying that, because it is. He is coming with significant intention that these next 3 months are going to make my whole year. His philosophy is, if I don't get it in these 3 months, I might as well not do the rest of the year. Whereas prior to that, it was, well, we're slow anyway, so I'm gonna work, but this isn't gonna be the make or break months. It's flipped now. It's totally different. So he will have a record breaking year because of what he's done.
Did you see what's on the side of his desk?
No.
So on the side of his desk is the President's Club 2020 final numbers, and on the top over his name he has put missed it by. For him, he's counting units, right? For those of you at home or listening, whatever, he's counting units, and he put down that he missed his goal by 15 units. And it sits right there. Check it out when you get in the office. I mean, so he's not only, walking the talk. We know him to set a sustainable pace for him, which you'd say, who could show up like that every day, every year? And he has. So for him, it's obviously sustainable. But I'm proud when I saw that, because for him, that's a goal. It's not going away. He didn't hit it. He'll tell you he didn't hit it. He'll tell you it stung. I happened to be in the office with him on the last day of the fiscal year, and I just watched him sit at his desk, just figuring out, and he's like, there's just no way I can do it. And what I like about it is, he didn't try to ride a high to close out the year. He just continued with his momentum that he had built for himself through the whole year. So he was acknowledging that this is going to come up a little short, and maybe he traces that back to October, November, December.
No doubt.
But what's cool about that,
no doubt,
and in the same breath of him being gutted that he missed it by 15 units or whatever it was, what most people would do, to your point, is the next day is the start of the new year. For us, it's October 1st. It's our fiscal year. People would say, well, this one's going to sting a little bit. I'm going to let this one sting for a bit. I'm going to go home. I'm going to punch a hole in the wall.
Feel bad about myself.
I'm going to get drunk. I'm going to have some. No. The very next day, he was in the office with the same, maybe a slightly different plan for himself for the next 3 months. But he was right back in the seat because he had momentum. He was bringing even though what he did wasn't enough, he was still carrying that level of momentum. I think what you're saying, what I'm hearing you, is he's just going to ramp up the level of momentum a little bit more and just carry more momentum. So it's as much as it stings, it is such a cool story of someone that says, this is important. I'm either willing to crawl over the razor wire or dig under it.
Right.
And come hell or high water, I'm going to find a way to get this done.
And it's also a situation just like you talked about of he's been through this multiple times, right? So he got started. He did a plan. He went through the process. He fell up short. He's had those conversations like you're saying. And this year he's going, all right, hold on a second. I'm stepping back. I'm looking at this for what it is. All right, I'm creating a protocol. And that protocol is the moment, the area that I thought wasn't as important, I'm going to make that now the most important.
So amazing.
And the way that you think and philosophy drives behavior, and it's such a clinic on what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's those for anybody that wants to talk about, I got close but I didn't get there. My question to you is, what does the very next day look like when you realize you haven't gotten there?
You hear that about, I think it was in The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary, where you would just think about, and I know a lot of the lead athletes have very similar stories. I mean, I know the book we just read with Russell Wilson when he lost the Super Bowl to the Patriots through that pick on the goal line, right? I think he was back at it the next week or the next day, right? And the point was because it's the same thing. And I remember what Michael Jordan saying growing up, which I don't know, everything growing up was in the basketball world was attributed to Michael Jordan. So maybe this is him or not, but I remember just hearing that, when you lose a game or you have a bad game, you allow yourself 15 minutes to feel sorry for yourself. But once that 15 minutes is up, you go back to work. So certainly Torrey is a good example of where he certainly was gutted, but he was also understanding that next day comes, you can now control and get back to a point of building yourself some momentum. So
amazing,
awesome.
Amazing. And it's cool to hear you say that, because you look at Torrey, at least I look at Torrey, and I just see somebody that just, to me, walks the talk. Every day I walk the talk. I hold a pace that's sustainable. I mean, he's gonna. I mean,
and he's off to an incredible start.
Off to an amazing
he's
start.
Off to his best start.
Yeah,
and that's totally intentional. It's totally intentional.
Just no mistakes. The whole. This is what this episode has done for me, is provided some clarity on the fact that you're not gonna hit a goal by mistake. You set a goal in January, you're not going to trip over that goal. It's going to, unless it really was a feel good goal or a bullshit goal or something that, something that really matters to you, you're not going to trip over it. You're not going to hit it by accident. You're going to hit it through intentionality. You're going to hit it through whatever the steps look like for you. You're going to hit it when you can manage through the gray area, when you fall off. How do you get back on? This has been a fun episode to talk about.
Well, I was going to ask, what are your takeaways? Because by you saying that, it's already triggering a little. After this episode, I'm a little bit more clear than I started on what maybe my 2021 wants.
No question, no question. I mean,
I walk away from this going with identity. Are you am I somebody who hits goals? Is that my identity? Because it's a process. You learn from it. You know how to chunk it down, like you're saying. You know how to get clarity. You know how to keep yourself on pace. You know how to create protocols. You understand strategy. You're self-aware enough to know what drives you, what doesn't. So it isn't one of those things where some years you should hit your goals and the next year you don't hit your goals. If you're a cleaner, if you're a high performer, when you set goals, the majority of them you probably hit. Just because hell or high water, that's just how you do, and there's a process, and that's who you are. So I'm walking away from this saying, I'm gonna enhance that identity that I'm somebody who hits goals, and hold myself to the standard that I need to act in a way of somebody who does hit goals. Mm-hmm. So
cool.
That'd be my takeaway.
I like it.
Yeah.
But you, Rodney?
Yeah, like what I just said. I mean, I know my tendencies. I know I may be the guy that may set some goals for feel good reasons, and it's not a good feeling. But then again, the things that I know are important to me, I set them and I follow them and I manage them every day. So for me, I think it's being more intentional with the goals that I set, and whether it's 1 or whether it's 7, make sure that those are the goals you're willing to jump over the razor wire for, and and then building that into, and it's nothing new, it's stuff we know, but just maybe getting back to the importance of those basics and just staying true to the process for me.
Yeah.
And what I like about what you said earlier, Taylor, is there's going to be some gray time that slides in there. It's having the system, the personal system, or the awareness or the self-awareness to know that when this happens or I fall off, this is going to be my system or my protocol for getting back on. The other thing that you said that I'm going to take away from this is, who are the people that I want to emulate? Who are the people that I want to be like? Certain things that maybe I call goals need to just be built into a lifestyle. Say, well, if they're doing it, I need to do it. It's not a goal. It's just got to be part of your behavior.
Right.
So
I love that. Yeah. I just take away, again, I think it's come out through my language, but just self-awareness. I would just encourage anybody that is making goals to just make them for you, make them for you, because at the end of the day, the person that is going to be executing or achieving those goals is going to be you. It's not going to be the person in your mastermind group or your accountability partner. And that's been a fun journey. It's in what you said too about identity. I'm somebody who accomplishes goals. I get nervous. I get nervous putting stuff on paper, because I know once it's there, you just really have to question yourself. Like, am I willing to give up whatever it takes to get it? Is it that important to me? And I think that whole process is fun to go through, because we talked about yesterday about a little bit, hey, let's have a podcast on New Year, New You. And when you hear that, you're like, New Year, New Me. Now, like, it's just, the funny part is it's the same you, right? It's the same habits, same tendencies, it's the same DNA, it's the same personality traits. But do you know that person better? And are you more developed than you were the last year? And I think you had mentioned, like, I'm a big believer that we need fresh starts. We need a start and a finish line. And I agree with you. I think there's something about a start and a finish line that allows you to progress in a way that is productive. So I'm looking forward to that start line just as much as anybody, because you give yourself the permission to go after something, and letting go of other things, or letting go of past year's goals and making new ones. So
that's awesome.
I love that.
Well, my New Year's resolution this year, I won't share what it is, but before we even got here, it was to remove something. Ironically enough, we're having this conversation. Something I want to stop doing, not something I want to start doing. So we'll check in on that. But man, guys, I literally get nuggets every time we sit down. It's
Likewise.
Awesome. Behavior way to happiness. I love that. It's something I took away significantly. So always fun.
Always a pleasure.
Always fun, man. So we'll turn these cameras off and
we'll get back to you in February when we fall off the wagon.
Yeah, right.
Bye for now.
Cool, boys.
See you.